Welcome to today's show. I am Aisha Bascaro,
And I'm Curtis Moore.
and we are here to welcome you to today's show. And the topic for today would be, what are the challenges for franchisees of today? And we're going to get it kicked off first by having a conversation about the difference in culture that's happening in the franchise industry today. So, Curtis, what would you talk about? What would you share are some of the challenges that are changing, or some of the things that are changing in the culture from the way it used to be to the way it is today?
Well, I think when you're comparing a point in time in the past to right now, and in my mind, you don't have to go back very far. And I really look at COVID. If we go back to early, like January, February of 2020 to now, just that time frame, to me, it's just been the greatest change overall, from the effect of employees and all that goes with that to pricing and other things that we're going to talk about here. It's just mind-boggling. And I think, as it started with COVID, and then customers and employees started staying home. That changed. You talk about delivery of food, let's say, in the franchise community. It was going on prior to COVID, but it really took off like a rocket.
Yeah, I remember that even before COVID, people, obviously the starting of Uber Eats and Grubhub was already starting. People were already exploring having their food delivered, and a lot of companies that never delivered before were actually playing around it, but it was more like a little small testing side channel type of thing, right? Obviously, you and I, having been in the in one of the largest pizza delivery company, we knew all about delivery, and for us that was a natural thing. But we started seeing people getting into that delivery part. But you're right, as soon as COVID hit, the culture change that happened from having food delivered, and you were saying something about employees and customers staying home, right?
Yeah, and we're still feeling the effect of that, and it comes out in the most common terminology of staffing. That people have since I was 16 years old, which has been a week or two back. Staffing has always been an issue, and not in every store, not in every business, but generally it's just it's a challenge. Always has been. Nothing like it's been in the last three and a half years. Nothing even compares with this time. And we used to say, in previous to COVID, that we were entering into the area where you couldn't no longer just put up a now hiring sign. You get 5 applications, hire 2 people, and you're done. Take the sign down. That doesn't work. Go down the street, and in signs that were developed originally to market your product or service, right? These white signs and different. What do they all say now? They're really called help wanted signs. Every business down the street has this help wanted sign now. So it is a tremendous challenge, because you can't snap your finger. On the one hand, you can't snap your finger and solve it. And on the other hand, when you're supposed to have 10 employees providing the product or service at a given point in time, and you've got 4, boy, I don't really know. You can't overcome that. And the person that realizes that the most is the customer. So it's a challenge. It's a tremendous challenge.
Yeah, and I see how right now, a lot of people say, every time there's issues, customer service issues, product quality issues, it always follows by they don't have enough people, right? They don't have enough people. Yeah. And it just becomes an explanation. Customers know it, they excuse it to a certain point, but at the same time, part of this whole culture that that is changing, while they are excusing it, I'm sure that a lot of customers are thinking, do I really want to go out and buy something, whether it's food or go to retail and any experience outside, knowing that my experience as a customer is not going to be great, and yet I'm paying more for everything, right?
Yeah.
And so
I wonder how many of us, if we would admit it, maybe it's subconscious, that we've just lowered in the last 3, we just lowered our expectation before we even go in to sit down, before we go through the drive-through, before if you can find somebody to come help you at Home Depots or wherever you're at, we've just lowered. I thought about this. I think it is what it is. I've just lowered my expectation. And the only time you get upset now is when it's even worse than your lowered expectation. You're like, oh my gosh,
Wow, that is so true and so sad, isn't it? Because the reality is that I don't think anyone wants to be mediocre or poor execution of operations. Absolutely. I think that everybody wants to be great, but it's just becoming really hard, and a lot. So that part of the culture has changed, but and at the same time, the culture of the employees of today is also changing right now, because everybody experienced those weeks and months of staying home and lower stress and less worry and all the government support, financial support that made it easy to stay and be comfortable. But it was always supposed to be short term. I mean, it was supposed to be over at some point in time, but because we experienced that, so many as a whole countries, right? It definitely changed a lot of that culture. We're talking about how we thought about what we wanted or not wanted, or what we were willing to accept or not accept, which now, probably a year or two after that's over, a lot of people are still fighting that and not wanting to go back to the way it used to be, which is what causes so many issues for employers, because the spirit of the employees that are coming, not everybody of course, but a lot of them, is changed, as how do they show up at work. And right. And that is definitely a big challenge now, knowing all of this, because I don't want in this show to be all about how bad things are going, right? But what are the things that you would think that franchisees can do, knowing this, to be able to maybe change it, or have it be that while that is a change in the employees, what do you think they can do to make it so that the employees are still committed and excited and wanting to be at work? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've thought about it in the class that we teach through the American Franchise Academy. What we try to say, I think the message almost would be the same 5 years back, because as I said earlier, there was staffing issues prior to COVID, right? So what I tell people even now that we get it, we always tell them, we always say that we're very cognizant. We've run markets that had a few stores that were tough to staff. They were just, we've had those issues, but we hadn't had an issue where it was every store. It was just permeated the whole marketplace. But I still go back to whether you're talking 5 years ago or right now, there's still those methodical things that you have to address. You have to treat people right. You have to pay them right. And even, that I'm not even talking about how it's inflated now, but concerns have to be addressed. And we really start with the thing, do you have a staffing problem, meaning a hiring problem, or do you have a turnover problem? Because it was important 5 years ago. It is incredibly important that you look at, why am I losing people? If it's because they're crappy and they stole from me, okay, they got to go. I'm sorry. But if it's because we just, we allowed the manager to yell and scream, and we were not flexible on their hours at all, and, they're scheduled to get off at 6 o'clock and we're short, and we keep wanting them to stay over, and, they got babysitting needs or whatever, that gets old kind of in a hurry. So I think number one is you have to redouble your efforts and be honest with yourself and look at the causes for the people that you're losing. And I mean, literally write them down, put them in an Excel spreadsheet. Do you see anything common? And I would begin with the thing that we run into all them. There are so many people that don't know what their turnover number is. If you ask them, what percentage of your people, this is what, we're in middle of July. So we're 6 full months, almost 7 months into the year. What's your year-to-date turnover right now? You've got 10 stores and you go, I don't know. That's a huge problem, because let me tell you, if I did the numbers, it wouldn't be that hard. If you've got 8 of them at 40% and you've got 2 at 80%, something's going on. it just shouldn't take much to find out why are we so just bleeding people, just churning in these two stores. So addressing the turnover in depth and all that goes with that, starting with knowing what your number is. How are you interviewing? We also ask supervisors, when is the last time you sat with a manager in an interview? And if they're honest, the majority it's been, back for. So we're just assuming the managers, and we talk about behavioral based questioning as opposed to why do you want this job? We're asking questions that when we get answered, we can't really do anything with it. It doesn't tell us how they were in their previous career, their previous job. So,
and I think that it does start first with knowing what is your turnover, and you're right, because once you know what's your turnover, and not just for the whole company, but specifically unit by unit, if you are a multi-unit franchisee, because you're right, you will identify that some units have a worse turnover than others. And once you do that, then you need to start digging deeper into those units to find out why those units have higher turnover. And I would also say the other way around, the ones that have the lowest turnover, why are those units have the lowest turnover? Like what makes them, what is happening in that place? And I think it goes back again to culture, right? And the things that are happening within that unit, because we all know that while the franchisee could create, a great charter with mission, vision, and values, and have a belief of what they want the culture to be in their units, and they might translate to the district managers if they have district managers, right, or talk about it with the unit managers. But at the end of the day, really, truly, who controls the culture and the experience at the unit is the unit manager. We have always said, have we not, that the unit manager is the most important role in any franchise business, because they are the ones that set the pace for every unit.
Yeah. I think historically, in my experience, when I used to ask the question, who's your best manager, or within a store, who's your best employee? When I would get, that one is, I always came back with, what makes you say that? And I've had some crazy answers. Well, I had a guy tell me, well, they don't steal from me. That's why you're saying of all your employees, that's the best one, because they don't steal. So I think from when you're talking about the manager, and like you say, I'd go to two managers. Who's the worst? I'd go to that store. What's going on here? But I'd also go to the best one. Give me something. They may be doing things you're not even aware of, right? And I think SurveyMonkey would be the greatest tool that you could use because before it had to be, do a questionnaire. I'll give you a little story. I was supervising all the Great American Cookie stores in Atlanta in early 90s, I suppose. And the cookie store, believe it or not, we were required to have a grease trap under the 3-compartment sink. And I forget it's so many gallons, but it was like, like that and about that deep. It was just hardly anything in it. And we had to clean it because it would get inspected, I don't know, once a quarter, every 6 months, I can't remember. And so that was the store's responsibility to do it. And it was not a fun job. It wasn't like a big septic tank at somebody's house or anything.
I'm sure that was probably one of the stinkiest, less liked.
I had done it. I was a manager before. I had done it, and you could do it. And if you just said, "Let's get this thing done," put some gloves on and go to it, you can do it in 30. You can do it in less than 30 minutes, But so we did a survey. Fast forward, it was a paper survey. What are 3 things that if we could change, you would feel better about, that things you don't like, you don't want to do, whatever. And it was almost unanimous, the grease trap. And we thought, I can fix that this week. And so we got estimates, and I had a company from then on would come in and take care of that. The manager didn't have to do it. Now, how many jobs did that keep? I don't know, but based on the surveys, I had to say that it impacted them.
I'm sure that I mean, when you do something like that, not only would now make the job less no fun, for the manager, but also when you do things like that, when you ask them and you find specific things that you know you can actually do, and then you do something about it, the message that you give them that you care, because we know that something that is a principle that is never going to change is that if the employee knows that you care about them, by doing things like that, they're going to care more about you. Bottom line, right? I mean, it really starts with that. And so if you take the time to ask, and then you find that, what is, the biggest thing, and you can actually do something about it, and you then do it, the message that you do. So for sure, I am sure that end up becoming a retention thing, that even if it's not something that even the managers themselves can point to it, it's still part of the spirit of how they were loyal to the organization because of that. And while it was an investment, I'm sure obviously it cost X amount of dollars to do, it still, it still became something that the employees really truly appreciated, and become a positive feeling and thought towards, the business owners, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't, my last point, because otherwise you might as well come take the class, right? Sign up and take the class.
Yes, exactly.
But I would say, here's a statistic I learned from Domino's. And I don't know if I can remember the exact number, but it was enough to make a room full of people go, oh my gosh. They looked at all of the people that came to work for Domino's, and it worked. I want to say worked at least one day up to, I don't know, I forget the second time, but it's a very short time. And it said, what percentage of people do you think after their first day, they never came back? One day. They onboarded, in many cases, that was just it. They were just onboarding, sign your paperwork, watch this video, we're going to talk to you and whatever. And they never came back. And I use it in the class. The percentage was unbelievable. It was and thinking, oh my God, we're out here killing ourselves trying to hire people, and we can't even get this ridiculous percentage past day one. We could solve our staffing problem if we can just fix this problem. And so it really came down to, if you ask yourself at the end of that first day, every employee is going to go home, and somebody in person, on the phone, text, is going to ask them a question. Their mother, brother, father, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend is going to ask them a question. And what do you think that question is?
How was your day? How was your first day at work?
How was your first day? They know right then, after day one, whether they're going back tomorrow. I'd never thought about that until then. And even if they do go back, they're already looking for a job. They don't like this one. They knew right away. So I go back to, and I try to show that it is in this linear, I call it a linear progression, multi-hurdle that people do, got to fill out an application. That's a hurdle. You got to do your first interview. That's a hurdle, or whatever. Is that these people, the way that the way that you, the supervisor, whoever conducts this onboarding, the first day training and whatever, it's critical. Mm-hmm. And generally, we don't really put any effort into it. We don't even really think about it. You go in there and you find out, this is your first day? This is your second day? Yes, sir. Why is the shirt so dirty? Or that's the shirt they gave me. Mm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And I'm saying, did anybody show you? No, nobody said. Just so my point being, how do we handle the staffing issues that we find ourselves in this COVID still era is to go back and redouble our efforts in the things that we should have been doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that we care about people. We understand it's a lot easier to keep people. They're already trained. They're already invested. It's a lot easier. And financially, it's better for us to take care of these people than putting all of our effort in just getting new people to come in the door, right?
Yeah, the way that I see it is what you need to do today to overcome the cultural change of the employees it's the same things that you need to do before, but now they are so much more important today than they used to be before, because now the impact, the result of doing that is
Right.
so much better and higher than the result of that they would be in the past. But because you said in the past it was easy, you needed employees, you put it up a sign and you have people applying and you pick the people and you're done.
Right.
And so doing the right things, we're just doing the right things. But now doing the right things are critical for your success and business health, so that you can actually keep great people in your organization. What used to be nice to haves and the right things to have, right now they're musts. You have
Absolutely.
to become a much better leader in the employee life cycle care, and understand what it is and how to do it and where to do it, and and etc. And not only yourself, but anybody in your organization that is doing those systems and processes that are implementing the hiring and doing the onboarding. They need to know how to do this very well, so that they can have that healthy staffing and culture and employee situation in each of the units. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Customer service, that was important 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's always been important. But exactly. If you're short staffed and people are waiting longer for the product or service, then what is twice as critical as it used to be is the interaction when the customer finally gets the product and service and has an interaction with an employee, that they're apologetic, they're just trained better to know you got to teach them the environment that they're in. It's not your fault that we're short staffed. It's not your fault that somebody's getting upset. This is our environment that we're in. We're trying to improve the situation. I give you an example. I go to the slowest, I thought in Decula was the slowest.
And I'm going to say, interact a little bit. This is part of the changes that is happening now, or the challenges that franchisees are facing now with technology, right? Because, the technology is getting in the way between the relationship between the franchisee and the customer, between the customer and the employees, and things have changed. But go ahead with your story.
Yeah, because we'll cover that when we had talked earlier about that. But the one that I'm the go-to now, and don't judge me about going to McDonald's. I get a quick little burger, little fry, half and half, tea, and I'm on my way. But it is incredibly slow. I've waited longer. It's sometimes where I have limited choices because finally I'm a little more away from civilization. But the reason I go back is every time I finally get to the window to get my product, they're as nice as they can be. If they weren't,
that's not common anymore.
It's the only reason I go back. If they weren't, then I would have no choice. I just couldn't have bad, timed service, so to speak, this kind of service, and interpersonal poor service. I couldn't take both of them. So
it goes to show about how, as a consumers, we have lower our expectations, right? I guess it's part of the culture of lowering the expectations of what you're going to receive. But if at least a part of the experience is a positive one, then you are willing to come back and give them a second chance. But if everything was bad, like if the speed of service was bad, and on top of that, the customer service was bad, it got to the point you go like, forget it. That's it, right?
Yeah, because nobody sells a product or service that's life or death that we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's food or services. And for every food, there's 50 other choices within 5 miles that you could get. And if it's a service, there's other choices that you can get. You and I talked earlier about, we all, whether we know it or not, and it may be subconscious, I hadn't thought about it until you and I were talking, we have lowered our expectation. It's the world we live in now, and it's just not like it used to be. Those were the good old days kind of thing. But when service comes in even below that, that's when we really take our pocketbook or our purse and we will go somewhere else, right? So,
and there are options today. There are lots of options, right? I mean, we are talking, not just the independent businesses, but franchises. There are 300 new franchisors listed every year. Now, a lot of franchisors also fail every year. which is another one of the challenges that are happening right now with franchisees today, that, because of the boom of the franchise model, which I love, you and I love the franchise model. It's a way for people to become entrepreneurs that do not have all the 110 skills that you require to have to develop a proven successful brand. I mean, it is rare the people that actually are able to do that successfully. So having the ability to buy a proven brand that already exists, already demonstrated that can bring revenue, and the model actually can be profitable, is a much better way to become an entrepreneur for sure. I mean, I see it obviously every day. But the challenge is too is that there are, like I said, about 300 new franchisors that are opening they're starting to sell franchises every year. And many of them are not prepared to support the franchisees the way they need to. And so the challenge, which has become much bigger now than it used to be in the past, when the number of franchise brands were a lot less and more experienced, more mature, right? What we call the legacy brands. There's a lot of startup and emerging brands that now these entrepreneur aspiring dreamers are choosing from. But these franchisors are not prepared to support them the way these franchisees need to be supported. So I think that's a challenge that's happening, right now. And one of the things that is important, and is that the franchisees choose the right brand, right? That they actually go out and choose the right brand and really do the due diligence and research to see how these franchisors are going to support them in their success. And on top of that, also the clarity that they need to know, as new franchisees, that when you're buying a brand, you're not getting everything you need to be successful. You're only getting the brand, the product, the service, the image, right? The things that the franchisor is supposed to provide, because they don't give you a business degree in franchising, and business management. That's something that you as a business owner are supposed to either bring to the table or acquire before you open, or while you're opening, or at some point in time if you're going to be successful. But that just adds, doesn't it? Today is different and more challenging than it was before for franchisees. Don't you think that, Curtis?
Oh, absolutely. I think I think the most critical decision a potential franchisee, and they got to make a lot of decisions, but the most critical one is which franchise or they want to hitch up to. And like you say, so many, if we back up into the 70s, predominantly it was big names that were franchising. Nowadays, you can pick a beauty salon or a plumber. I'll just use a plumber. A guy's a great plumber and he ends up with 2 locations, and then he meets a friend of a friend who's a lawyer, and he says, you can franchise this thing. And in theory, it may sound great. But the question then is, this guy with 2 stores, is he fully prepared, and all that means, to support this guy 40 miles away that wants to buy a franchise and locate it there? And many, in the high percentage, in my experience, they're not. They may ultimately be prepared, but right now they're not. They will collect the franchise upfront fee. They will collect the weekly or monthly fee, however it's transacted. But there really is, the infrastructure is very weak to help this new franchise owner. And I would say I've seen so many people sign up with franchisees that, is there an adaptability, a connectivity with the type of business you're getting ready to get into with the experience that you're at right now. On the one hand, you have somebody could be a great beautician, but just doesn't understand cash flow and business side of it at all. And you look at the number of failures in the franchise world, it's not that they all of a sudden became a poor beautician or plumber or lawn care guy. It was the business side and ultimately lack of funding that causes their demise.
So it might not even be that the brand was bad, because the brand it's a proven brand that has revenue and customers to success in another location. Obviously the brand is proven, but now you have it in a different place with a different manager, a different franchisee or business owner that does not have the skills or the 15-year experience that original founder and owner had acquired to running the business, just having a proven successful brand on its own does not give you the guarantee of success. And today there are over 3,000 brands to choose from in the United States. Wow. And less than 500 are legacy brands. So you might, and the thing is that a lot of people are running to those emerging brands, which, by the way, I think they're great. I mean, there are amazing emerging startup brands that are successful and doing fantastic, so I'm not saying by any means don't go to those. I think that they're great because they give you a great opportunity for markets that right now, if you were to try to get one of the legacy brands in your market, good luck. Probably they're all open in all these cities and all the corners, so you have no way to get in unless you go to some Timbuktu little town and, so there's no possibilities. These emerging brands give you the ability to then have access to a business in a market that it might be new for them. And so it opens the opportunity for you, but you have to make sure that you're choosing the right brand to do it on. And, there's great benefits, and that's the thing. You have to go in with your eyes open. There are great benefits of doing emerging and startup brands because obviously you're there at the beginning. You are able to capture a market. You probably have more control over your business because as bigger and more mature these brands become, the more and more control they have over operations, and therefore you will have less ability to be flexible. And so there is benefits of actually getting into an emerging startup brand. You just have to make sure that the franchisor that is running that brand is prepared to be able to support you. And if they're not, then you need to know that you need to prepare yourself to support yourself to ensure your success, which that means that you have to have even more knowledge, more experience, to be able to do that successfully. I mean, I can see how, people that have already successful multi-unit enterprises are looking for those emerging brands, by the way. There's emerging brand franchise shows and things, and these successful multi-unit franchisees are going to those looking for what is the newest and greatest, that's coming up so that they can jump in. And because they have all the knowledge, they have the experience, they don't need to have a powerful, successful, totally prepared franchisor because they have the skills that they need to make that. As long as the brand is a solid brand, good product, good service, good image, good marketing processes and, equipment and procedures, if they have that, a successful or already multi-unit enterprise franchisee can make it work. But if you're new, as a franchisee, then you really need to do that and do it with your eyes open. I think that's something that's definitely changed. It's a challenge that, franchisees have more today than they used to have before, right? Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about, the big inflation, which is a big challenge of today that I think that it is, we're experiencing, franchisees experience that today more than ever, or at least more than the last 30, 40 years, and it's affecting so many things. Like, for example, obviously labor costs. We are paying more for every hour of our employees. We're definitely paying more for the products. To what you were saying about how you're willing to wait or overlook the speed of service, but good customer service. But what about those prices, Curtis? I mean, have you seen the prices of products now lately?
Well, let me tell you a little story. If you, and don't judge me on McDonald's, but sometimes I'm in a hurry. I just want to go and I need to eat a little something. So I'll go to McDonald's. And if we back up 2019, let's say, and you get a little hamburger, it's called a Mac double or a Mac chicken, small fry, tea. I get a half and half tea, half sweet, half unsweet. Yeah, I can remember it was $3.50. So it's quick, it's easy, it's cheap. Boom, you're on your way. And then it went to one day it was like $4.50, and sometimes I wasn't looking at the ticket, and I'm like, wow. And then it goes to $5.50. Fast forward, it is over $8. It depends. I get two prices at two different McDonald's, but it's $7.50 to over $8. Not for this big burger, some Five Guys. I mean, just it's incredible. It's incredible. So I had told you earlier, $350, $450. Okay. What? $557? What? At what point do I go, okay, maybe I can afford it, but it's a personal thing. I have other choices. Maybe the price is lower. I can plan better and eat at home. There's my favorite I'll just say sandwich. I don't want to give their name. I don't want to criticize them. I love it. It's my first choice if we're eating out, and I'm not talking about a nicer restaurant, but for my wife and I to eat that in a little bag of chips and a tea, I mean, it's like $24. I mean, it's
$24.
At least is it, and it's head and shoulders above anybody else. And a lot of my friends, we all agree, and they're just skyrocketing. And it begs the question, how much, and elasticity of demand means like a pharmaceutical, a drug that you need to live. The demand doesn't go down because the price goes up. It's just no elasticity at all. But for something like this, there is demand because it's so good and the service is so good and the place is clean, and it will continue to rise until at some point, economics says it's just not going to rise any higher. Demand is going to start dropping as you go above that point. So, and like you mentioned it, labor is just astronomical, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it has to be on the one hand, and it's governmental on the other hand. But the price, I'll bet they're paying, a franchise or the business owner is paying more for a napkin right now than they've ever paid in the history of napkins, and mop heads to broom handles to you name it. And it's you and I talked about with inflation, it's everything, and it's elasticity. So you can't. So the question becomes, because we don't, like you say, we don't want this to be doom and gloom. So what do you do? What would Curtis?
Yes. What do you do? Yes, exactly.
What do you and I should think about? I said, well, given those that you're telling me that those are the facts. So what I'm going to say then, all along, wasted labor that people clocking in before they should, staying on the clock, that was always important. And you were always taught, you got to watch it. It's imperative now. It's imperative. I'm looking for every nickel I can find to stop raising the price to the customer, because I know it's coming at some point. So I've got to be more diligent in cash shortage than I ever have. I've got to be more diligent in proper ordering. You come to find out, very few people will look at how many dollars, and you can find it if you do your inventory, how many dollars are sitting on the shelf. And you find out you got a product A, you got enough in the back room to last 2 months. Yeah. And that's you paid for them.
And that's money that is sitting in the shelf that really shouldn't be sitting. It's funny how you're right. One of the things that we talk about in the mastermind with our franchisee clients is all about that, because I think it really goes back again to what we talked about earlier. Yes, the way that you onboarded and you hired employees was important. The way that you treated them and how you paid, all that was important before, but now it's so much more. Right. The same thing when it comes to managing the business and the expenses of the business. Before, being able to, do a proper, inventory-based cost management, cost of goods management was important. It is more important now because you cannot overlook, the details of how to maximize the business, like minimize the waste. So before, okay, we may have a little bit of waste on product costs and a little bit of waste on labor. And while, the top performing franchisees or the ones that make the most money were the ones that paid attention to the details. Now, right, for you to survive and for you to thrive, you have to pay attention to the details. And to be able to do that, you need to know what the details are and how to pay attention so you can actually change them. And here is where the level of sophistication that you need to have to be a successful franchisee, again, it's another change from before to now. on the challenges of franchising today, is that now for you to be able to be a successful franchisee, you cannot just have a great brand and operate that. You really have to be able to understand the business so that you can really understand where the money's going, because it was a pennies business before. It is much more so now. But now you need to be much more educated and understanding of what the business is so that you can overcome, because all these things are still overcomable. We're not in a point, and I hope, Curtis, that you would agree with me that franchising is still a great model, still
Absolutely.
a great business, right?
Absolutely.
But
And
we need to be better at it, right?
absolutely. And people are stores aren't closing. I don't go
Right.
down the street, close for staffing, close for staff. People are doing it now. Is the staff, if it's a reduced staff, are they under more stress than they've ever been? Absolutely. Is the franchise owner under stress? Absolutely. Yep. But it is still a viable market. The person that can, whether they came with it, or let's say the person who didn't bring this kind of knowledge, but they went out and got it. They found someone to give them knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to. So the inventory, are you knowledgeable enough to do what we're asking you, to analyze your inventory to see what waste is sitting on the shelf that could be in your checking account right now? Because the truck comes every week. You don't need 2 months worth of anything hardly. And are you knowledgeable enough? And if you're not, go get educated on it. And I think you mentioned that. And then the other is, are you willing? Because it's going to take you extra time and extra work to be more diligent in all of these areas that now are just super critical. If you care about profitability, they're super critical.
Yeah. I remember how there's a lot of videos and coaching and guidance on franchising, but a lot of it was strategy and how you see the business and how to get the cash to grow. But I think that where you win now in franchising is to really understand the intricacies of your business, yep. And that information is not out there. There really isn't a lot of really detailed knowledge, and the franchisor can't get into it because of all these legal issues, which, by the way, that brings me to other challenge of today versus where before. I remember when first you and I met many years ago. We didn't talk about joint liability issues, like all this legal things that precludes franchisors in providing franchisees the support that they used to, that was beyond what they get now. But now, so not only all these challenges are coming up that the franchisees need to be able to learn about, but the franchisors are handcuffed in many ways on being able to support that. Can you share a little bit about what you've seen has been the change?
Oh, absolutely.
The new challenges of today for franchisees that they didn't have before.
And in a few states, everywhere, that's an issue. In a few states, it's even worse. I used to be a national trainer for Domino's, and I would fly all over the place teaching classes, franchise owners, supervisors, some bigger merged markets with manager meetings and stuff. These were in person. And the things that I used to do with supervisors, because the franchisor will still teach the franchisee product, service, and image. I am not getting into accounting, and they're not doing that. But where I used to teach with managers and supervisors, they don't do, and I'm not saying just McDonald's, and McDonald's is in a very deep lawsuit right now for this very issue. They don't teach any of that anymore. It's not that they don't want to. It's not that they don't think that it's important. It's not that they didn't used to, but it's this fear of litigation that has spread and is permeated everywhere. They tell them, you have to go outside and get that information. The risk is too great.
In the reality, that is why the American Franchise Academy exists. Because, when I first started, talking to franchisees and they were reaching out to me, asking me questions, the questions they were asking me were not about the brand. They were reaching out to me, even though they knew I had all this knowledge and experience in these brands that they had businesses in. But the questions they were asking me were about the managing side, the management systems, the business side. that because of course we have run operations and run franchises and run brands and master franchises around the world. They wanted to know that piece, which now, as have years come by, the franchisors are able to teach less and less and less. I had a call not too long ago with a very big conglomerate, franchise. And we were talking about how, said, Aisha, it's not that we don't want to teach it. We just simply can't. We used to it. We have all the materials, all the information, but we just cannot do it anymore. And so here's where, the American Franchise Academy exists. Today, we have grown to where we are today, not only providing franchisees their knowledge and the support, but expanding as you know, Mr. Curtis, as an instructor for our district manager class, how, we have expanded into district manager training and now unit manager training we launched this year so that we can give those unit managers, because you could be a great franchisee and business owner, but it doesn't mean that you're a great trainer. When you agree, I mean, how many franchisees are actually great trainers?
Absolutely.
And so here's where we come in. But that is definitely a big change and a challenge right now, which is why franchisees need to be so much more knowledgeable about business, their brand, and the people, and pay attention to the details so that they can be the successful franchisees it can be. I mean, you can still be very successful. A lot of our clients are very successful and growing leaps and bounds, because once you have that knowledge, then you are able to, expand faster than others that don't. And that's also causing opportunities for the people that get this knowledge, these abilities, these skills, because the ones that don't and are not getting the support that they used to, their success is going down and they're willing to sell, right? And so what you can do, right, if you are in that situation and, understanding those challenges, what you could do is get yourself educated to be able to overcome the lack of support from the franchisor in the areas that just simply cannot, which is the business management and franchise management, right? And then teach your people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about, one more thing that is, big challenges of today versus of the yesterday for franchisees. And let's talk about, overall, and I know we talked about unit economics, but the unit economics, and I know I met with a franchise leader and, executive, and that is not only a franchisee, but in recent years has expanded into acquiring brands and now developing brands of their own with this knowledge. And he said to me, Aisha, unit economics, it has eroded so much that on average, maybe you might have an EBITDA of 10% on average, right? That means that some people have a lot less and people have a lot more. So on average, your EBITDA is about 10%. But most franchisees have loans, obviously, right? And of course, you have your depreciation amortization. So really, the take-home money that you have is actually like 5% of your net sales. So at that point, you have to really think, okay, what is, what is the goal for my organization? How many units do I need to grow into, and the amount of headaches and things that you have to grow to be able to accomplish the financial return that you want from this organization? And so the result of this unit economics is all of it, right? Is, reducing, sales because of the higher pricing and, uncertainty for the economic future. Then the higher labor costs because you pay more people so that they can hopefully stay. And then of course you have no control over whether your products or your supplies and everything that you're buying now, it costs more money. And so this is eroding the unit economics. What kind of thoughts do you have of what franchisees can do to maybe tackle the unit economics in the organization, so that while it is less than before, what can they do to be able to be better at it?
Yeah. Remind me of that question, because I'm sure I'm going to get lost, because I'm going to take a different angle to begin with. I know, and I've had personal experience in a company, and I see that leader now in another company initiating the same things. And it was a tangible, sincere desire to increase the unit economics and a plan that, if followed, would do that. Well, if you can't show any success stories, that's a hard sell. But if you can put up on the board, here's the guy, they were dedicated to this program. Here's where they were. Y'all were on this graph, and all of a sudden they're up here. Then it started becoming, oh, maybe I will listen a little bit more, and maybe I will try to do that. Because the truth of the matter, and you're exactly right. I used to tell somebody, if your ultimate goal is to franchise and get one store, really what you're doing is getting a job. I hope you like that business, whatever it is, because you're going to work it. You're probably not going to have enough bottom line for a manager. So there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want, that's great. Most people, want a better lifestyle from this success of this capitalistic system, and they should. So, you have a bottom line of, $5,000. Well, I can't live off, good Lord, and you think, well, if I had 10 stores making 5,000, okay. And that's why people, they start to see the economics of multiple units. But it goes back to everything that we've been talking about, that if we go there and we find that the ideal food cost is 21% and you've been running 23.5 for a year, there's some money. All right, that should be on the bottom. If most of it should be on the bottom line, you're running 28% labor, and we look at ideal and it's 27. Right, there's a little bit more. I mean, there are the things that and you even look at pricing. I'm almost in the belief that once you go up in price, in a lot of cases, not all, it's hard to come back down. Yeah. If you can go back and graph and you see when I raised it here, that's when customer count dropped. I mean, I'm not saying lower it, but I'm saying I would take a look at it. And it goes back to everything that you've ever heard that was important about running one store it's 10 times more important right now. You're talking about sales. When I hear sales, a number, 20,000 a week, that is X amount of customers multiplied times this average ticket. And that's really the two numbers that make up this thing that we call sales. So is there a way that I can, raising average ticket, I think people are at the upper limits of that one. So how much energy has been spent? How do we get more people in the door, or on the phone, or on the internet? And then it starts getting into the world of marketing. Are you doing the things that over here, these people are doing these things and they're successful about it? And a franchisor can get that kind of information to demonstrate to someone, an investment in whatever this marketing is going to pay you dividends. So I tell you what you can't do. You can't just be static and not do anything. That's off the table.
That is so true. You cannot just do nothing. You have to do something. Yeah. That's one of the things that I always share, is that you need to be able to understand your business. You need to be able to have the data to analyze it. But just that alone is not enough. You need to act. You got to do something to change something about that you see that is not going in the right direction. Because if you think that just having a great brand that is going to do, it's going to be enough, it's not. You have to be a great business owner. And I think that, because I would say that in closure, for all this conversation, which was a great conversation. I think we can go on forever on all the things that are different now from before, right? But I would say, that how you can overcome really all these things is really becoming a better business manager. Right? Don't you think?
Absolutely. Yes, I think that is the key. I mean, it is, it's almost like we're trying to investigate and find, and we get the answer and go, that's it. And the answer is, yeah, that's it. You back in the past, if you had a high enough volume, you could waste some food. Doesn't mean you're smart. You shouldn't be doing it. It's wasted money. You're never going to get it back. But you were making so much profit, you could do it. Your labor could be higher than any other store around. You could afford it. You could do it. You can't do that anymore. And especially if you're the one saying, hey, my unit economics are bad. First thing I'm going to do is, all right, let's see where we're at right now. How is, in the two big rocks in the bowl is food and labor. or cost of goods for those that aren't food, cost of goods sold and labor. Let's go look at those. And I'm going to know a lot just by looking at those two. I'm going to know a lot about your managerial capabilities and abilities looking at those two numbers. Because if I go in there and I go, my God, look at these two together, that's 4% that's gone, that doesn't need to be. That tells me the more I look, the more I'm going to find, right?
Yeah, and any of the franchisee themselves even know that. Do they know how much they're wasting in labor? Do they know how much they're wasting in product costs? Do they know how much, right? Go ahead.
This was such an enlightening thing when I came, because I worked in the corporate side, right? Mm-hmm. And I was with franchise owners and we got into stuff. And the ones that generally, the multi-unit guys, they were pretty on top of stuff. They had some infrastructure. But it was amazing, the 1 and 2 store guys, they were great store managers and they got this great opportunity. And what they didn't know about the business side was kind of amazing. And then I'm with you in the AFA and I'm talking to supervisors, and the opportunity for knowledge is out there. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. It's incredible how, and you're right, because we can actually meet with any franchisee or business owner for that matter and ask them 4 questions. And from that, we would know how much money they're leaving on the table based on the answers. And the answers will be based on the knowledge of their business.
Right.
And like you said before, knowing, how to, surface level, how to run the business was good enough before. It is not good enough today. And
this reminds me, I mean, I was a helicopter pilot for 10 years, flew in Vietnam and all that, but I see an analogy where we stick our heads in the cockpit and the pilot is, I think we're headed the right direction. I'm not sure, but I've done this before. So, we'd be scared to death. What altitude are you supposed to be at? I'm not really sure, but I think it's 20,000 feet. So you have to be a professional now, more than ever. If you own a business, there's so much governmental, federal, state, county, the city, that's requirement. You just have to be on your A game in so many different areas. And this staffing stuff, if you don't, you may have supervisors, but if you're not knowledgeable of this stuff and get some experience in how to see when things are wrong and then how to develop a plan to fix it, like you said, you're just leaving money on the table.
Yeah, and being able, on top of that, being able to define what policies, processes, procedures can actually make you profitable, and then documenting them and then giving them to your people to follow and then follow up. I think that is the key. Not only just really understanding your business and what it takes to change it, but if you're going to grow into a multi-unit, you need to not only understand it, but you need to define everything that's in here and in here into paper, documenting it, and then giving it to your people so that they can follow up, so that they can be educated.
Yep.
Especially if you're in retail, when you have, employees that are just coming out of high school, or maybe even in high school, and they don't have the first thing about running a business. Then that's when you take on the responsibility. I always say, for our franchisee clients, when you said yes to franchising, you said yes also to teaching people how to be employees. You actually said yes to teaching people how to be employees in your organization and teach them over and over and over and over again, because they're not going to be with you forever. So any new person, you got to teach them how to be an employee. Any new person, teach them how to be a new employee. And the only way that you can do that successfully and multiply across multiple units is by defining the process and procedures that you want to teach them, documenting them, then teach them, and then follow up that they're actually doing it. So it's all doable. But the good news for those of you that are, listening to this and watching this, the good news is that it is doable. It is learnable. It is possible, and it will give you a lot of return, but you have to do the work. It's not as easy as it used to be before. It can still be as successful and make you a lot of money, especially if you're one of those people that have this knowledge, you can do it. It can do very well for you, but you need to be really embrace all these things that we're talking about and become an expert at your business so that you can make the most out of it. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So any last thoughts, Curtis, for the people that are here with us today on things that they can do to overcome the challenges of today versus what we were used to be before?
When we were preparing for this, we were talking about different topics and, want to have some sense of methodology in what we're talking about. And when we're just simply naming the topics that we debated about which ones we'd talk about. You said, it can't just be doom and gloom, because it is. I mean, you look at here's what you've got to face. You got to face inflation, government interference. The franchise owner legally can't help you in a lot of things and all this stuff. But we did talk about, we agreed we'd talk about how do you combat each. If we're going to talk about something that's like, oh my gosh, then we have to talk about some solutions to it. And it's clear that we can. One of your favorite sayings that I've been hearing you say in different areas when we're together is, you might have been a third word, but you say tactical and practical. Mm-hmm. Is there a third word?
Yeah, no, tactical, practical. No, what we teach is not theory and fluff, but tactical, practical processes and systems to be able to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think of that when I think of, if we're talking to a franchise owner right now, someone who's, one or two or three store, you have to be tactical and practical. You have to have processes and procedures. Wishing and hoping is not going to cut it. Between competition and government and lingering COVID effects and inflation, it's just too much. If you're going to maximize a return on investment, and I'd look at anybody, you put in a goodly bit of money and invested from your family into this program, why would you not go all the way, right? And like you said, it is possible. We see people that are successful that are doing these things, and it's like they're working 23 hours a day to do it. If the first part is, you got to be honest for yourself. Am I capable? Do I have the knowledge to do these things that I hear these two people talking about? And if you don't, go get it. And I'm not saying, come to wherever you feel comfortable with but you have to get this knowledge, and you have to turn that knowledge into and mix it with where you came from, what's your background, into your ability, right? And the skills to be able to accomplish the things that we're talking about, because it boils down to the bottom line. Can you increase the profitability of your company? If you can, everybody wins. You win, all your employees win, you and their families win. It can be done.
Awesome. Thank you, Curtis. And I will leave you again with, the last thought of that you do need to become an expert at your franchise business. You need to be able to understand all the intricacies and the details of it, and then being able to pass it on to your employees. And I don't want to finish this, particular show without telling you that that's what the American Franchise Academy does. We're here and we have programs for franchisees. If you are a franchisee that wants to be a multi-unit, that you want to be able to understand and learn your business to that level of intricacy, that's what the American Franchise Academy does with the Command program. So if you want to learn more, just visit us at the Academy, AmericanFranchiseAcademy.com website, learn about those programs. If what you see is that maybe you have a need for better district manager training, maybe they need to have better tools and systems and processes and routines to be able to maximize the profitability of your business, we have a program for that. We realize that in the marketplace, there is a lack of training on district managers and that role. And for that reason, we developed the multi-unit leadership certification program. It's only a 10-week program that gives them all the tools they need to have to be able to successfully oversee a district. And if the issue is that the unit managers in your organization do not understand the details of how to have better labor costs, better product costs, better inspiration, better culture in your organization, that's why we developed the unit management class. So again, and I don't want to go too much into details. If you're going to learn more about the programs and how we here, the American Franchise Academy, can serve you on how to be able to learn the business and be able to be the one of the many that are succeeding and making a lot of profit and scaling in franchise world, we're here to support you in that journey. So thank you, Curtis, for joining me on today's show. That was really fun. And we definitely had to talk about what's going to be the topic for our next show, and come back to everybody here so that they can learn more from our combined, we were doing the math, over 80 years of franchise experience. That makes me feel a little old. You're old.
Yeah.
I'm not old.
Yeah, it's all right.
Anyway, so actually, I know that with both of us, we are passionate about franchising and giving you knowledge and information. And so we're definitely going to be now, actually, before we leave, a question for you. People that are listening, what kind of things are the challenges of today's of franchising? Put it in the comments down here on this video, and put the challenges, and maybe it's a challenge that you are experiencing. And if you do that in the comments, either Curtis and I will go in there and give you a couple of ideas on how you can tackle those in your franchise business. We want this to be interactive and hear from you. Or if you have any ideas of topics that you would like for Curtis and I to discuss and give you some best practices and tips, please do so. And we will take it into consideration when him and I are discussing what we're going to talk about next time. So having said that, this is Aicha Bascaro.
And I'm Curtis Moore.
And we are happy to be here, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.